We have a full boat of information today to talk to you about. So we're going to talk to you about a little bit of stuff in aerospace. We got to talk to you about a little bit of stuff computing. But I think where we're going to kick it off is talking about something that Corey brought to my attention, which is my old alma mater, United Express, making the move into the electrified air travel future. And this is basically them announcing that they are going to be going into a deal to purchase United Airlines to purchase 100 electric aircraft from Heart Aerospace. Now, this is coming to you from Fox Business, and it's saying that the investment is part of United's goal to reduce its greenhouse gas emissions 100% by 2050. But more importantly than that, this is possibly the first aircraft that I'm going to say. Obviously, it takes after a popular design, right? It's got the high wing, four engine, electric transport going for it, which is beautiful, right? Nice looking design. But this is probably the first one that I say that I agree with that aligns more with what could be practical in the future. However, there's a caveat, and that caveat is range again.
Oh yeah,
So, Corey, talk to me about the range on this bad boy.
yeah. So as we get in here again, they're calling it the ES-19, and as Mike said, it's basically what United wants to do with its regional routes going
Hmm.
forward, at least for a while. They admit that as battery technology improves, range will also improve, but they said they wanted to get in a bit early with various manufacturers to kind of be at the forefront of that. And if you go through some of these the article on the actual aircraft itself, it's
Hmm.
saying yes, 250 miles of range on this airplane, which that far.
No, not really.
So all the same questions that Mike and I have brought to you guys' attention before, having to do with airline operations and air taxi operations and degraded visual environments, talking about IFR flights, will lead us to immediately think of regulations of required range for things such as required alternates,
Hmm.
things like that. And having 250 miles range on regional, that I would very much assume they're going to be trying to fly an IFR.
Sure. Well,
I mean, I
121
mean,
world
yeah, of
is
course they want to, right?
required, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, man, it's the same old question. It's about it brings me to immediately back to mind of what's the real world range. They say 250,
Right.
awesome, great, full passengers, all max gross takeoff weight with bags and whatever else they need to put on there. How far is it actually going to go, depending on how the weather is and everything? And the same old thing again, right? Comes back, and I'll pass it over to you right after that. Is the same old thing. Batteries are great, but batteries don't get lighter the longer you fly.
Correct.
Whereas you fly along in anything that's in 121 now that's not electric, right?
Right.
You burn that weight in fuel as you fly because you're burning it off. That's literally how it works. So you're getting lighter as you fly. In case this is not, it's gonna. So yeah,
Hmm.
Mike. I mean, what are you thinking, man?
I mean, so far I'm just taking out some stuff that's on the aircraft, right? And what I'm basically seeing is that they have spent some time on the exterior design. We haven't seen a
Yep.
lot in the cabin, right?
Yep.
A lot of details of the things that I would like to know is, especially in the 120 world, like you mentioned, alternates, is hey, how is this thing really going to fly in airspace, and what is it going to do once it encounters weather? Okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
so now the primary type of weather that I'm talking about here is, well, icing and all sorts of different
Oh yeah. Yeah.
conditions that could happen, right? And what it looks like to me is that they're going with some sort of boot system without just being able to diagnose what I'm looking at. These black leading edges of the wings here, they look to be like a boot pressurized system that we've seen in previous aircraft, which is easily certifiable, right? The 250 nautical mile range, just like you said, weather 250 miles is right on the cusp of where you would expect to find, say, maybe different weather. If it has the speed to escape weather, then that's a good thing because it might be able to get around the alternate minimums in that
Right.
particular respect. But lastly, I guess the biggest thing for me is 19 passengers. What sort of routes? Now, typically, what they're talking about here and what they said in this article is that this thing will turn around and do routes like Purdue to, what are they saying? O'Hare to Purdue,
Yep.
right? Let's see.
Yep.
This is from the article. It says here it says most operations will be the ES-19 will be able to fly out of 100 of United's regional routes, right?
Yep. Yep.
Most of the hubs, including O'Hare, Purdue, San Francisco International, Modesto, such like that. Okay, so here's the deal. I wonder how it's going to do in mountain flying because that means Denver, which is one of their massive hubs, which a 19 seat plane might be stretching it because mostly they do 50-seat operations in and out of some of these smaller airports. I'm wondering where it's going to fit in the marketplace. But if they're looking for that green impact of that goal of 200, 2050 and making it that they can cut down emissions when they say that Only 0.5% of all flying will really be impacted by this and really make that green footprint like change. I'm a little skeptical of
Yeah.
what it's going to really do to shift their role and how they're going to make this work for them. But
Yeah.
as far as an investment now, Heart Aerospace,
Oh yeah.
they look pretty sound on paper.
Yep.
Okay, they do look like they've put some time and energy into making this a thought out, or at least a well thought out enough aircraft that it will be able to fulfill the roles of what people expect. So, and just going along with that. So, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, same. I mean, if you just peruse their website a bit, they look like they've got their stuff together. They have obviously have some pictures of some test bed equipment here for the engine nacelle on one of these pages on the career page,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a bunch of openings. A lot of them are in Gothenburg. Um, Actually, 4 pages of openings, so it seems like they're definitely doing a bunch of hiring.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they've already signed on with United, so they got a 100 aircraft. So it's something more to another one of the things we say this a lot, but it's things we're gonna follow and see what happens, see how it develops. Because a lot of times we talk about stuff that's brand new, right on the cutting edge of whatever
Right.
it is. So again, I know we say that often, but we will keep up and try to see as we move forward. Um, all the same things I just spoke about and Mike just spoke about in terms of hurdles of something that's going to try to operate in 121 world
Mm-hmm.
with 19 seats out of, as you said, possibly mountainous areas, and have a range of only 250 miles on paper.
Yep.
We have to see, because I'm thinking of other things too, right? Which I'm thinking of things like onboard air conditioning, right? You're taxiing takeoff, right? The aircraft's nacelles, you don't need to have the electric propellers out there turning while you're taxiing if you're just waiting to take off, let's say,
Right.
or you're just holding for something or whatever. But you're going to need something to power air conditioning, something that functions like an APU for whatever it actually is running on board while you're just sitting around waiting for some taxi or whatever. So
That is a
that's
really
all going to take battery power.
yeah. Well,
I don't know how much it depends. That's all things that are auxiliary. In addition to the main engines themselves, which
mm-hmm.
obviously, looking at the pictures, going, oh, okay, the engines are going to take a bunch, or the electric motors, a lot
Right.
of the power. Sure. Well, there's other stuff that's got to run, and Mike talked about a lot. Icing.
You
I
just
just want
brought
to
up
talk about air conditioning. Our life support stuff.
the interior looks nice,
I
by the way.
mean, I don't know. I don't know. It's to be seen. It's to be seen how far that's really going to go. And you could probably rest assured too that as battery density improves, which we know we talked about also on the channel, battery density, something everybody's working
Mm-hmm.
on in the EV space for on the ground and in the air, we'll have massive improvements across all the sectors. I would assume this upgrades as we go, and yeah. But yeah, what are you thinking, Mike?
Okay, so you just brought up a really good point and something that I didn't even think about until you mentioned it, and that is I'm going to bring up the picture of this aircraft. Right, here's the deal. Right, it looks good. It looks good in the United colors. Right, number one,
Yeah,
it looks really nice. But here's the situation. You're right. A turbine aircraft would require the engines to be started at the gate, right, and then
Yep.
they would taxi away, knowing that they have at least one engine started, so
Yep.
that they could either
Run everything.
transfer the bleed air and then get the other engine started. However, you don't have to have that requirement with this particular aircraft,
Nope.
which means there is going to be one substantial savings that I didn't realize. When this thing does stop somewhere, if you can have the air conditioning run electrically off of some other compressor or some
Sure.
other pump,
Yeah, something more efficient.
you don't have to worry about shutting these engines down. So when you taxi, this thing will literally spool up
They
as
just
you
go
taxi,
and they just slow down,
and then they
stop.
just slow down and
and then you're
stop
just sitting there
when you're
which
sitting there waiting
is
in
valid.
taxi.
Yeah.
Which is something that really didn't occur to me, which is kind of a range extender, because when we would leave the gate in a turbine powered aircraft, we would have to have enough fuel on board to both taxi, wait if there was any delays on the ground,
Yep.
and then move forward, and then be able to either possibly figure out what our route was with the fuel we had on board, or then not. So the only thing is, if you're only really worrying about powering the cabin or powering, say, the cockpit,
Yeah, like avionics and stuff.
and they are a separate battery system from the main engines.
Sure.
Well, the nice part about this aircraft is it should be always ready to kind of go, so it might not have some of those limitations when operating in that type of weather.
Yeah.
Still doesn't change it once it gets airborne.
I can just imagine you're sitting there with a window seat, I guess, and you're looking outside and there's like nothing running, and then they just start spooling up and you move, and then you maybe stop and they just stop again.
It'll be weird.
It'll be different.
It'll be different.
But I don't see if those other things we just identified, if those aren't worked out some other way, why that couldn't be a effective cost savings.
Sure.
I would certainly imagine they've thought of this. We're We're just
spitballing.
kind of talking together. But there you
Wait,
go.
because look, the biggest thing is going to be battery density to range, which we've discussed so many
Yep.
times
Versus
before,
weight,
versus weight,
which is
and
there. Yeah.
moving anything in the air, which is a weight balance equation, requires energy, and it takes a lot of energy to keep things in the air. It's really funny how people just think, oh, it's a plane, you could just throw as much in it as you. No, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
It reaches limits pretty quick. Forward loading limits, rear loading limits. There's going to be all sorts of things about where the battery packs need to be placed. What's a consumable item, how the luggage is going to be handled, or the baggage. So there's going to be lots of questions that if they think that they're that close, which United makes it sound like they are, good for them. We got to see it work out on the actual specifications.
Yep. And if you're not familiar with the design of aircraft, whether it's helicopters, airplanes, whatever it might be, the kind of rule of thumb is it needs to be super strong, super light, and you got to play a balance there. And that's where we're kind of getting. We'll talk about weight and balance, and just weight as you fly along in a traditional aircraft where you burn the fuel. You benefit back in performance because you're losing mass, you're losing fuel as you're consuming it, rather, not losing, consuming it as you fly. That's obviously a benefit, but it's a different kind of ball game. So we'll see.
Yep. There's one last thing that I guess I really want to take a look at, which is the ES-19. If it's actually.
Did they say 2023?
Yeah, I'm trying
to.
Let's see one thing. If they've actually had a successful flight, and from what I'm understanding right now is
2026.
Okay, so what was that?
2026
is their first time they're going to go for
so
flight. So the aircraft hasn't been certified yet, so there's still a lot of things that need to be worked out in the process.
Fast track development to begin commercial service by
2026. Okay, so they got their work cut out for them. So hey, who's also got their work cut out for them? We do. So help us cut out more work for us, and leave a comment in the description below, and let us know what you think about our take on what the ES-19 from Heart is, and what United's forward-looking policy on green aircraft could possibly do for the market and for the future of aviation. There you go. Help us out to help you out.